Doing it. We're live.
Oh,
It's properly working.
this is
How are
great.
you?
I'm good. I'm recovered. I mean, you can
You are
still hear
recovered.
my voice. My voice is just a little bit husky,
It
but
is. Did you sleep? For everyone who's
yeah,
joining us, we didn't speak last week when we were going to Bronwyn because you got COVID.
I did. I did.
Melbourne gave it to you, and I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say it was. I don't want to say it's worth it. I don't think illness is ever worth anything, but I did have an amazing time. Especially, I mean, we've met in person before, but only really briefly, and then a lot of our friendship has been online.
It
And
really has. It
yeah,
was such a good hug.
yeah.
I said it to some of our other WordCave friends as well. So for people who are joining us, I am talking to my friend, the writer Bronwyn Birdsall. She is joining us. I'm here on Wurundjeri country, and Bronwyn, you are up north. Where are you?
I'm on the lands of the Mildenhall people of the Bundjalung Nation. So we're
Amazing.
everywhere, everything north of the Brunswick River, so the most easterly part of the continent. It's really lucky to be here, really.
You are lucky. Sometimes when you are speaking to us when we're in an online session together, I think, oh my gosh, now Bronwyn's going out there into her beautiful part of the world. We're talking tonight. I've got Bronwyn's beautiful book here, a brand new book, Time and Tide in Sarajevo. She promised to talk to me only because we were going to talk about reels, but I just want to mention this amazing book as well and get Bronwyn to tell us a little bit about it. Tonight, we are talking authors and social media because Bronwyn, you did the best reel ever. And then when we saw each other for the first time in ages, a couple of weeks ago, I said, you've got to tell us everything about how you did that. And you agreed to, which is lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to chat. I mean, I sort of cobbled together a career out of the fact that I'm like a digital person. Like, I think I was, an early, we're early elder millennials, right? We're sort of this.
I do believe we are elder millennials. Yes, thank you, Bronwyn.
So, you know what I mean? So I sort of, as social media became something that was going to be used in businesses, I had returned home to Australia from Bosnia and I was working in admin jobs, but then sort of morphed into being a social media person as that job became a job, so I've really kind of experienced it from a very early perspective. And so I think what's interesting now, 10 years on as a writer, I'm kind of looking at it possibly in a slightly different way because I'm kind of coming from more of a commercial perspective. But I also kind of feel like it's a space that can be really fraught for writers because we are people who, I mean, generally speaking, if you're someone who spends several years writing a book, you're not necessarily someone who is going to be like a snappy, I mean, some people are and amazing, but you're not necessarily going to be someone who's like a snappy, I'm just going to tell you how I feel in a second. I know a lot of writers often have this fraught relationship.
They really do. They feel really, really stressed about it. And I know we've got some questions that we're going to deal with. And I really want to hear your approach. And I want to know, before I get you just to speak briefly about Time and Tide, can you tell us, did you treat yourself as like your own client? Did you literally bring your skills from that kind of corporate digital marketing across and say, well, how am I going to do this to make all those years of hard work that I've put into my book? How am I going to make that work for me?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds quite clinical, but maybe so my book came out about 3 weeks ago. I'm looking at the calendar. 3 weeks ago around that. And maybe 4 months ago, I had a phone call with a friend of mine in Sydney. And she was like, so you haven't really done anything on social media about your book. And she said, so you have this skill set. How can you not bring that skill set to this experience? And then I sort of applied what my friend and your friend Jessie Cole labeled Bronwyn Birdsall Enterprises.
Yes.
I approached that to the book. I mean, I have to say, I do believe, and this is controversial, I believe the best marketing tool for a book is a well-written book. That is, I think anyone that's running a digital marketing program for writers, that needs to be the first point. That's the most important thing, is the book. But then, so once the book's done, so the book's gone to print, I'm happy with the book, then I sort of started thinking about in the same way that I would a client. So I worked with a lot of restaurants, a lot of hospitality, and you'd always try, like my strategy anyway, was I was always trying to mimic the experience of the restaurant, say, through the digital. So meaning in the website, in the emails people get, in the social media itself. But it's like this idea where it's very customer focused, like it's experiential. That's kind of my attitude towards digital, right? Like that's from a commercial perspective.
I love that. And I want to talk a little bit about your website and an email that you did, perhaps for the people who are joining us. And thank you so much for joining us and talking to Bronwyn Birdsall. Can you give us just the elevator pitch for Time and Tide in Sarajevo so people can understand that kind of feel that you wanted to do as well?
Yeah, so my novel's about a young Australian called Evelyn. She's living in Sarajevo, which is the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And the novel follows her for a couple of days as she faces this impossible decision. So it's a decision that's going to put her friendships at risk, but also her students' ambitions at risk because she's working as an English teacher. So I think it's about the question, like, how do we go on in a world that feels beyond repair? Or what happens when you don't believe in a future anymore? Like it's an existential kind of book, you know, it's a heart book, it's a feeling book. So there's an element of that, therefore, that had to come through in anything digital.
There's also the element of the fact that this is based very much in some of your own experiences as an English teacher in Bosnia. So how have you kind of thought about that as part of the storytelling that you're doing in the publicity for your book?
Yeah, I think, I guess my theory is that basically anything, it's like, you know, George Saunders says about sentences, he said they should be as Kate as possible. They should be as Bronwyn as possible. I've kind of been trying to think of my socials as like, it should be as Bronwyn as possible. And like the reels I've been making and things like this, like, and it sounds a bit funny, but to me, they feel like me the same way as I think my book feels like me to someone who would know me. Like it's and you can call that authenticity, like you can call it this, but for me, it's also like I spend time on things, like I don't rush stuff. I mean, I never have. And so when often I'll make like a reel and then leave it for a day and then come back and be like, no, but this doesn't quite feel like me, you know? So it's a very
there's a way of making it fun. I know that Catherine Collette and I, who I did a podcast with, and I were away last weekend together doing some work and some writing and also attending Els Fitzgerald's launch, and I see that Els Fitzgerald has joined us, so congratulations to you, Els. And we had so much fun just kind of playing with, we were trying to, you know, up our real skills, and we were just playing with things, and we were looking at possibilities, and this idea that we are creative folk, and the idea that you can turn it from something that is like a chore or something that's revolting that you don't want to think about, or something that you think is you know, not for you because it's too networky and it's too advertising and you don't want to do it at all, that we actually turned it into this quite fun storytelling exercise, which I think is the approach that you take.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just think it's a moment, and I mean, I had the same cringe kind of feeling.
Oh, I've lost Bronwyn only momentarily. No, she's back. Perfect. Yep, you're there. You had the same kind of cringe feeling. Yeah,
can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay,
we've got
I can't see me. That's fine. Do you know, that was Instagram. That is a very good point. That was Instagram saying to me, do you need a break? So that's very meta, because it's like,
I love it.
It's saying to me, you've been on for 10 minutes, you should go do something else. I have all these things set to tell me not to do things, which is perfect.
Okay, that's very impressive.
Yeah. It's tricky, the dopamine elements of it, but yeah, with the storytelling, like this is as I said, I did have that slight cringe, of course, when my friend said to me, come on, like you've got to be more on social media, as I think your friend Shay, I've heard that podcast, said to you, right? Like, what are you doing? Like, this is, you work all these years, you have this window. And then I really started thinking about it as storytelling. Like, this is like every kind of reel or post or whatever is a version of like it should have a beginning, middle, and end if it's a reel. Like, make it into like tiny, like you'd craft a short story. And also, as you said, have fun with it. Like,
have fun with it.
Yeah.
You've also been, I can see, absolutely. I was just looking this afternoon at your incredible website, which I really encourage people to go and look at. Is it just bronwynbirdsall.com?
Yeah. Just one of me.
Because I think that it's like you've thought about everything. And I was looking through, you've got a media kit for people. As someone who does a podcast and I have to regularly get high-res images, I have to look at a short bio or a long bio. Like, the stuff that you've put in that media kit is incredible. But you've also got this story of the way your book was written, including the beautiful section of your inspiration, which I think you call Constellations. Just tell us a little bit about what you wanted the website to do for you.
So with the website, I have to say it took me a long time to make. So it's not that I just sat down one afternoon and made it. And I think that's really important to say. It's not digital stuff tends to look bad before it looks good. And if you're not someone who's worked in digital, like, that might be something that if you try to make your own website could take you by surprise, because you think, hang on, it doesn't look as something I would like it to look like. That probably took me weeks to make, at least. And a lot of, again, but it's this same attitude of take the focus off yourself and imagine, say, like I'm a restaurant, imagine if you're a diner at a restaurant, you want to be able to see the menu of the restaurant and you want to be able to book a table. You want to know the location, you want to know the hours. And yes, you want to know the atmosphere and the fluffy stuff as well. But like, so I think with the website, I kind of made it very practical and then thought, okay, where can I add whimsy to it? For me, like, I've spent many, many years writing this book, as you know how it goes. And so the inspiration constellation was just like, I thought to myself, if no one ever looks at this, I love this. You know, it was actually just like a digital way for me to sort of kind of lay some breadcrumbs as to like what I was thinking about. Like, what's the definition of hope I find interesting? You know, like, what's the art that influenced this book? What's the music that influenced this book? I would love that as a reader.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. And I think that often, as someone who is obsessed, who reads books and then becomes obsessed with how they were made, I so often go back to look for that kind of stuff. And it was so glorious seeing it. You also have a newsletter and you did a mail out before the book came out. Can you just briefly tell us about the kind of purpose of those two things for you?
Yeah. So the newsletter is like I said, I don't rush things. It is a long work in progress that I haven't started sending out, but I have this sort of conceptual idea about making a newsletter about creative practice called One Sentence at a Time. So I have I've written several issues, but I think I've got it together. I think after the book stuff's done, I'm going to get on with it. Ace. But I think actually I read in, Courtney Malm's book. I've got it here somewhere. Before and after the book deal. I've got it I just saw it this morning somewhere.
Yeah, I've got it here somewhere too.
Well, she recommended a thing where you just send out one email which says like everything someone would need to know about the book if they wanted to support you. And again, like I spent several days kind of crafting it. I don't mean all day. I mean drafting and coming back to it. But so rather than sending 10 emails where you're like, the book's coming, the book's coming, the book's coming, just one. Just one. If someone misses it, they miss it. But it's also like respect for people's inboxes. I mean, it's saying, I'm sending you one email. I think it said that in the first line. So they know I'm not going to keep sending it. Here are the ways you can support the book. Here are some things coming up. And just sort of also kind of not apologizing for self-promoting, which is something I've heard you talk about many times.
Yeah, that's my rule. We do not say, I'm sorry, I'm going to be self-promoting for a little bit. Absolutely and utterly. That's not what we say. It's our work. It's our work.
Yeah. And at the same time, I would say also even with Instagram or Facebook, also respecting other people's time. Like you don't need to spam them. But if you're doing something like the reels you guys made at, I don't know what part of, is it Mornington Peninsula you were on for?
Yes. Yeah.
Like that's exciting to see. Like you're not spamming someone with telling them you know, sharing a beautiful story. It's like, it's an exchange is one. People are giving
Tell
you
us. I love that about exchange, because I think that one of the things that we were talking about as well is about engagement and about, I think you said something really good about warm and cool. What was that?
Oh, yeah. This is like a life philosophy as well as a digital philosophy. I just think that like being warm is better than being cool. And what I mean by that is like, if there's someone who you respect their work and you can, if you feel able to do it, like tell them, you know, tell them you like it. And on social media, I always try to remind myself, like, likes and comments are free. Like that is a free one. No one is getting points apart from like the numbers, but like in the sense of, I mean, I've always, and I actually think, I mean, strategically, this is a good thing to do. I just do it because I like doing it. And I ran accounts for so many years, and you would always be so grateful for the people that liked, liked what you did. But I just think like, even people you don't know, if they've posted something and it gives you kind of, like, don't be fake, but if they posted something and gives you a warm feeling, I just saw someone gave us a heart.
It's perfect.
You know, like, just, it takes a microsecond to like something, and warm over cool. That's why.
What's your response, Bronwyn, because I know, and you would have been dealing with this for the last few weeks with your book coming out, what do you do with responding to the people who are responding and engaging with you? Do you have set times to do that? Do you have notifications off? How are you managing the social media as part of your life and work?
So notifications are always off for everything apart from phone calls. That's a legacy from running accounts, because otherwise it's too hard on your dopamine, like it's too on your brain chemistry, I think. I wholeheartedly believe, like, if someone has taken the time to make a comment, but this is me as well, like everyone has their own voice on social media, but me, Bronwyn, the way I use it, always reply. But I do have a philosophy of like single tasking. So if I'm on Instagram, I'm just on Instagram. I won't, that's a discipline. Like, I don't then, you know, my brain will say, oh, I wonder what the weather's going to be tomorrow, but I just stay with it. So I'll reply to messages all at the same time, or comments, because it is a moment of community. And I just think, like, where the internet is good is where it builds community. And but you want to be structured if you can. Okay,
I want to get on to talking about reels. I know if people do want to ask questions, you can pop them in the comments there, and I will remember them, or I'm sure Bronwyn will as we go along. We'll pop them in. But there was a really specific question that I'm really interested in, that someone asked about putting, whether it's important, how important it is to put your face in the content that you are posting. I'm not sure if that was specifically for reels or just for social media in general. What's your take on that?
I just think, look, with everything with socials, the question, like, it's a good question, but I would actually say, like, there's a lot of questions like this where people are sort of thinking, if I could just get the answer to that, then I can game the system. But the algorithm is like constantly changing and evolving. Look, this has happened. I need to turn off my reminder.
I love it. It's so good in practice that we can see that you, Bronwyn, have very limited time that you use on social media, and you're very disciplined about it. I love it.
I know. I thought I turned it all off, but I obviously didn't. But you can still see me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're good.
Like, I guess what I would say is, again, coming back to this, I used to call it like the grand empathy exercise when I did more strategy, which is, if you were a reader and we're talking about, right, look, if you're a reader and you're looking through and you saw an author's face in their post, how would that make you feel? Like, would that make you feel more connected to them? So like I made a reel about going up to the street library in Federal.
Tell us about that.
I'm pointing to it, like you can see it. It's up in the hills. And I could have, for example, made that reel without me being in it. Yeah. But it was a day before my book came out. You can, if you, like I'm saying for the person who asked this question, if you imagine that reel without me in it, It still
Yeah.
would have worked.
Yeah.
I could have taken a picture of the book in the library and this and that. But, you know, what makes it a story is the fact you can see my face.
Yeah.
I think.
And that's why people love unboxing, right? Unboxing
Yeah.
videos, because they get that buzz from the author when the author is doing the thing of seeing their book for the first time. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty of reels. So what are your tips? Where do people even begin? And I suppose leading in with a question that came from someone was, is this the future, and do we need to be making them, bearing in mind that we are only doing kind of what we're comfortable with, which is what you've been talking about.
Course.
Tell us about why Instagram's moved to reels.
I think it's this idea of like the question I would say always with as things evolve, you know, I don't know if you remember, Facebook didn't used to have a news feed, right? Mm-hmm. As things evolve, it's always about holding our attention. Like attention is the key thing. So I guess the question, like this is what I come back to, is a reel, like I have certainly gotten lost in reels, right? Where you just kind of, you know, it's mesmerizing, this kind of short video content. Like and a lot of it's silly, and a lot of it's not that, you know, it's kind of juvenile sometimes, or it's very profound. Like it can be anything of the scale. But I guess the short answer is like, yes, they're important, because at the moment the algorithm is clearly favoring them. But I also think they're a very dynamic way to tell a story, you know, like the books one, which you've shared many times.
Tell us about the books one. And if people haven't seen that yet, go back and have a look at it. You began that one with a question, Bronwyn. What was the question?
How long does it take me to write this book? Is that the question I started with? Yeah, exactly. It's a concept. And if you imagine that instead of the reel, I had just posted a picture of the notebooks, it still works. It's still a thing. But in terms of this question of whether reels, like, it's dynamic, it's interesting. And I think I did tell you that I thought I had an idea for it maybe a month earlier, and I tried to make it. I've got, which I'm actually using tonight, by the way, sticky tape everything. Like I have an $8 tripod from Kmart. That's what I made that reel with. Like,
I love that.
You know, DIY always for everything. I did a trial of it, and I couldn't quite get the lighting right because it's like stop motion. And so as I did it, it didn't work. And then it was just the books piling up. And I thought, oh, it didn't really work. And then I realized the reason it didn't work was because it really needed a copy of the book. Like, for it to be like a story. Yeah. You've got all the notebooks and then all the drafts. And of course, there's many more drafts than that. But then the fact they disappear and there's a book there, like that's a story.
It really is.
You know,
it's so visual, so dynamic. You used that word dynamic before, and I think that's what it is. So tell us, for people who are like, okay, well, I want to make a reel and I'm going to make a beautiful one like Bronwyn's. Can you give us a bit of a sense about just how long that took for you to make it? Because it's a complicated process, right?
Yeah, that took me like 2 hours, but the trial took me like at least an hour. Yeah. And also bear in mind that I know how to edit. Like, I'm not a video editor, but I know how to, you know, so I have some technical skill with it. But my advice on the reels is you can save drafts. So that's really, really important. Like the trickiest thing I think is actually the text. Because, you know, because it looks really simple, right? That you have image and then text and then they move.
Yeah, it's really hard.
It's really hard. So very practical tip is do the text last. Yeah. Because what's actually, I think, really, really important is the music. Like the music is crucial. I had like a playlist on Spotify where I had put songs that I thought would be good for reels. And I mean, without getting too micro details, but it's just kind of very Bronwyn. Like I wanted music that felt like my book as well. Yeah. My book is very dynamic. It is. It's a very fast book. It's literary fiction, but it reads like a thriller, people say. I don't know. But so I wanted music that felt like that. So, and then you don't have to do this, but I kind of cut to the music. But that's maybe
I love that. So one of the things that people could be doing is actually building that kind of Spotify playlist, building a list of the songs, because if you go in, Instagram will suggest music to you anyway.
Yeah.
So you can go with that option.
Yeah, exactly. But I found like it's like anything, like when you start listening for it, and also it's just a fun exercise, right? You think, what are my favorite songs? Like, what songs make me feel something? And then you can just search within Instagram and they should have it. And also you can move the slider thing, so you can find like the bit of music that suits. And I think with all the reels I've made, I've had sort of happy accidents where like I'm like, oh, the lyrics actually match, or you know, it's also fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And I would encourage people, because you know that you're not going, you're not putting it straight out. It's not going live. No one's going to publish it unless you press that share button, and you can make the drafts. That it is kind of fun to play with. If you can play with someone else in the same room and be doing it together. Like, that was really fun that Catherine and I were doing that at the same time, because we were experimenting with it. And I've also had my the gorgeous Jill Langhammer, who works with me and helps me out with stuff, that we did it together one day as well, kind of experimenting with it to see how it works. So I think that playfulness and the fun is part of it.
And I think
you actually have a challenge too.
I do have a challenge. One of the things I was going to say is that, like, I'm still relatively new to it, right? This is like a new technology, but new technology to me, I should say. I have discovered that mixing video and stills works really well, or something that you might think would be just a photo is often better if you actually video a little bit. So
I love how you did your book visits in Melbourne, like that.
That's all down to Carolyn Fraser, who you know. I said, because she took me around the bookstores, and very generously I was like, can you just take some video while I do stuff, and I'll see if I can, make something out of it. And when I got back to the apartment in Melbourne, I was like, oh my goodness, like she'd really catalogued the day spectacularly. And then it's interesting, like you just need like usually less than a second. That's one thing I would say, like make things as short as possible. So often I think reels, people will stay too long on something.
Interesting.
People have very fast ability to, I was going to say metabolize information. That's the right word. Process information. Like short is good, and often it's very dynamic. So the challenge idea I had was it could be a challenge for you as well.
I'm going to do this. I think everyone should be doing this, but I'm going to do it too.
Is just this idea that basically make a reel of however you want, but basically I would suggest, I think if you had, like, think of something that's like a good beginning, middle, end. So I was telling you that I went to visit this beautiful bookstore in Murwillumbah that reopened because it unfortunately was flooded in the floods in February. But then it's called Fable, and it's just this, it's a gorgeous bookstore, but also they've redone the inside. So you kind of have this sense of like things have been stripped back, and it's, anyway, it's just beautiful. So if I was to make that into a reel, like the storytelling, you have to say like this, you would have like an establishing shot, some details, and rather than just taking photos, by taking videos, it just gives something dynamism sort of. So I guess I wrote down the challenge here somewhere. Okay, so 5 photos, 3 videos to make a 20 to 30 second reel. Okay. But actually, as I'm saying it, I'm like, do it as you would do it. But I think around 8 bits of content to make 20 seconds is a good sort of ratio.
Amazing.
You could also do all video as well, but find it. The most important thing is think of something with a beginning, middle, and end. Yeah. Give us a song. Yeah. And then I actually think sometimes very concrete is easier for reels. So like going to the street library. Yes. Going to visit a bookstore, like something like this. And if you can, try to just find something in it that feels, I don't mean emotional like crying, but like give us a story. Okay. Yeah. I love it.
Okay, so the challenge is for everyone watching and the people who are going to watch this after, that you are making a reel. Bronwyn's asked for a mix of video and stills, so you're mixing those up. And it's 20 to 30 seconds. We're thinking about telling a story. Now, the key thing here, we're going to bring in Shay's advice on bringing the salad, is that when you do feel brave enough to share this, you're going to tag Bronwyn and I,
Yes.
so we can have a look at it and we can share it with the networks and be excited about what you've made as well. So that's the real challenge that Bronwyn and I are putting out to people.
And maybe even like if it's something to do with your writing practice or something to do with a book you've read or your neighborhood, like it doesn't have to be something huge. Like something every day can be very beautiful. Yeah.
This is excellent. Okay, I'm adding that to my list. Now, a couple of questions, and anyone who has joined us there and would like to ask a question before Bronwyn and I finish up in the next 5 minutes, please do pop a question in. I want to ask, I've been experimenting a little bit, and somebody did ask us in advance how you actually see whether this is working, and what kind of data we can track and measure. I've been experimenting a little bit with sometimes posting to my feed, to the grid when I make a reel, and sometimes not. Now, if I post it to my grid, I get heaps more views. Do you always post to the grid, or do you sometimes just make reels and let them kind of disappear away?
Always to the grid. Always.
Okay, excellent.
I mean, if nothing else, you've gone to the effort of making it.
It's true.
But also, I think from a performance point of view, I would agree with that.
Okay. All right. So people, we are posting to the grid as well. I did also want to ask you, Bronwyn, about what you've got coming up for Time and Tide, and where people can find you and your book, Time and Tide in Sarajevo, over the next little while, considering that everything got kind of jumbled up because you got COVID.
So today was going to be my Sydney launch, actually, but this is great. I'm happy. I'm here. So I'm going to be at Byron Writers Festival next, which is huge and exciting.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. So that's in 2 weeks' time. I'm on 2 incredible panels. Then I have my rescheduled Sydney launch, but I guess it's probably, Hayley Scrivener called it a landing, rather book land for herself. She did something 6 weeks after it came out, and I love this term. So it might be a bit more of a book landing, but everyone's welcome. It's at Glee Books, 4th of September in the afternoon.
Amazing.
And then I've got a few like online things on the boil, and I think there's a few events that I'd like to do. But the main project that I really am excited about beyond the book is the newsletter project. So that is going to start soon. But everything's on my website. As you
everything
know.
I have just signed up, which is very exciting. And I did see before in here, talking newsletters, that Maggie McKellar, author of the Sit Spot newsletter, is in here as well, which is amazing. Okay, we've got a great question there from Meg. Bronwyn, do you worry about what your grid looks like as a whole? Do you time your post to make it look pleasing?
No, I think that's really, I don't like that grid stuff. I'll answer a bit more properly. I just think like the idea that your grid should, you want to have quality content. Yeah. So the idea of like creating a stylized grid, I just think that between stories, reels, and everything else, I just don't think it should be a priority for us right now as writers. Like, I don't think this is something people are looking for. Authenticity, they're looking for engagement, like as in your engagement, and just maybe it's controversial, but for me, I just think it's like, I would not worry about that.
That's a great question, Meg. And it leads me to another one that I really wanted to ask, and that people might be interested in, about the connection between what you're doing and what your publisher's doing, and keeping each other in the loop, or whether or not there's a strategy. I know that in general, the people that we're talking to on the podcast and after drinks at events now are saying, I'm being asked to do a lot, and a lot of this is off my own back. But then there's things that you can, you know, the kinds of high-res images and sharing and things that you get for and from your publisher. How do you manage that, or what's your advice on managing that?
I just think it's like, oh, sorry, I just realized, Meg, that was a great question. I didn't mean to be dismissive of your question. I was dismissive of the concept of stylizing a grid. I don't think, I think it's like a communication thing. I think publishers would have different strategies for every book. So I opened the conversation relatively early on because I guess it's my background about what might be, what I could do, what they could do with my publisher. I think it's like my publisher firm is very good at reposting, sharing to stories, things like that. But I also think it's good to like have a think for yourself about how you want the book to be presented and bring that to them, because they are very busy people by and large. Having worked as an in-house marketer, digital marketer, if someone comes to you with a bit of sort of ideas and enthusiasm, you're going to run with that. Like I guess a more concise way of saying it is be an active participant in that dialogue.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's good. Meg feels better about her grid, so that's fine. We did just we moved on really quickly because I wanted to think about that idea of how we're measuring this stuff. Is there a measure that you have for yourself of whether it's worth your time in doing what you're doing?
Yeah. In like commercial social media, you talk about conversion all the time because, I mean, that's how you justify getting paid. So with something like this, I have a very airy-fairy kind of measurement, which is kind of like, do I feel connected to my community? Do I feel I'm being honest? Do I feel like I'm sharing things? Like, because the metric, like I don't have access to the, like you would have to construct some sort of like sales funnel, which is like, you know, a link from your Instagram to somewhere that you get measurement data on, which I don't know how that would happen in an Australian context. It's possible. So I stick to kind of those more like emotional criteria. Yeah.
So the types of conversations that you're having, the number of people that are seeing things that you're posting.
And also the engagement. Like if I got no comments on a post, I would see that as kind of not great in terms of it's like a conversation starter, you know, like.
Amazing.
So engagement would be my
engagement.
My criteria.
That's really good. Before we finish up, because I'm conscious that we need to let people go and enjoy their Sunday evenings. Can you give us kind of a couple of key points that, you know, a debut writer comes to you and says, Bronwyn, I really love what you're doing. My book's coming out in a couple of months. Tell me, like, what can I do? What are going to be the key kind of points that you give them?
Okay, so I would say social media is a moment where you can create distance between yourself and like a projected image of yourself. Don't do that. Have it as close as possible. Anything you post should be as close to authentic. It's still constructed, but as close to authentic as possible, because otherwise you're going to feel weird. Like that would be my sort of, you know, general advice. But from a sort of practical advice, I would say be sure to engage a lot with other authors with their content in a genuine way, of course. Keep like a list of ideas around what might be interesting. So I had some like other things I thought people might be interested in, like as in pictures from when I lived in Bosnia. At some point I thought I'd post things like that, but it's sort of in the end I just sort of didn't feel like what I wanted to share. You know, like there wasn't kind of the angle. So just, I would say, like, be strategic is what I'm trying to say. Like, also where you can find the fun in it. That would be the,
Bronwyn Birdsall, it is such a joy. I wish that I could like jump through the screen and give you a hug, because it's such a joy to see your face, and it's so amazing watching you share so generously, both with us here tonight, but also what you're doing. And I think one of the key things that I always tell people is to look at what other people are doing and to use that, you know, to model, to learn, to experiment, to play with it as well.
Yeah.
So I think that that's exactly what you're saying. Just have a go. I will repeat your challenge and our challenge, which is to make a reel and tag us in it. I have found that to be the most helpful thing to say to people who are feeling a little bit tentative about what they're doing on socials, which is just tag me in it. Tag me in it, because I'll see it and I'll be so proud of you and what you're doing. So I think that that's really important.
And Kate, before we go, thank you for being, you are like a community, like, institution of the Australian literary scene. No, I mean it. Like, as in, I'm not naturally very warm on social media in the sense of posting things about myself. I find it very overwhelming. And I really appreciate what you and also what Catherine, just this thing of like, actually, it's like a rising tide lifts all boats. You know, we're in it together. And, you know, even tonight, you inviting me on is really a testament to who you are.
Oh, thank you, gorgeous woman. And thank you all people who have joined us and people who might be watching this later. That's part of it too, about seeing that there is a community out there. It can feel like a very lonely thing on our screens, but there's a community out there and people watching. Find Bronwyn Birdsall's amazing book. I'm halfway through and I'm like, okay, also everyone get off so I can go and finish the book. Time and Tide in Sarajevo by Bronwyn Birdsall. It's out with the Fern Press. Thank you so much, darling Bronwyn, and I look forward to seeing everybody's reels.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks everyone for joining us.